Ever since the whole Star Wars Battlefront 2 loot box debacle that happened in late 2017, I knew it was inevitable that governments worldwide were going to crack down on this feature specifically. The problem is, with a game like Star Wars Battlefront 2, it's rated T for teens, and it's a game played by lots of kids. And the thing is, it was a predatory game. And of course, Electronic Arts was forced into fixing it, but judging by their reaction in 2017 at first, they were going to stand still until, of course, Disney came in and said, "Nuh-uh, you're not doing that to our franchise." Anyway, since then, there have been some bills introduced and a lot of conversation by various governments, mainly in Europe, but we've heard rumblings in the United States. Obviously, I think it was in 2017 or 2018, a representative from Hawaii, Chris Lee, tried to get some legislation passed just in that state, and the lobbyists working for the Entertainment Software Association, which represents many of the big video game publishers like Electronic Arts, Take-Two Interactive, Activision Blizzard, and many more publishers, well, they pretty much brought their lobbyists out and they fought it. They said that loot boxes are something that we're looking into. We've taken the steps to protect consumers, mainly kids, and the truth is they haven't. But the thing is, I would say that a lot of casual people, a lot of politicians specifically, don't know what loot boxes are. They don't know what the problem is. And we're starting to see more and more studies come out and say, yeah, loot boxes are predatory and manipulative, and they are problematic to younger players. And that's not something that's surprising to any of us. We've already all known that. We've seen so many reports over the years of people spending thousands and thousands of dollars in a game that's rated T for teen like Star Wars Battlefront 2. That's a problem. And I can understand the argument that may be made in a game like Call of Duty Black Ops 4, which is rated M for mature, but even then, to gamble in the United States, and many states I believe you have to be 21, and to play a rated M game, you have to be 18, so that's something. We'll get back to all of this, but let's go to the huge news that is breaking today, and it's news that the United States Senator has introduced a bill to ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions. This story coming via Kotaku's Jason Schreier, who's been on top of this subject for a long time, but let's go down to his article. He says, Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from, I believe, Missouri, today announced a bill that would ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions in games played by minors, so probably games not rated M for mature, a broad label that the senator will include both games designed for kids under 18 and games whose developers knowingly allow minor players to engage in microtransactions. So how that relates to a franchise like Call of Duty, that'll be very interesting, because even though the game is rated for M for mature, a large part of the audience is under 18. We all know that. But anyway, let's keep on going. Hawley will introduce the bill, the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act, to the U.S. Senate soon. In press materials announcing the bill, Hawley's team brought up the Activision game Candy Crush as an egregious example of pay-to-win microtransactions, thanks to its $150 luscious bundle that comes with a whole bunch of goodies. This bill will also likely apply to Fortnite, the biggest game in the world, along with a host of other online games that feature loot boxes and other ways in which players can spend money for real benefits. And I'm certain that games like Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Black Ops 3, and even FIFA Ultimate Team will be prime examples that'll be brought up into the argument that, yes, legislation needs to be presented and it needs to be implemented to stop these features from being implemented into these games. You can't trust these AAA gaming publishers and the executives at these companies. They're greedy, and they've shown that over the years. They've had the chances, they've had the time to regulate themselves, but they haven't. And it's clear that the only way that they're going to change is by being forced. Now, this article continues, when a game is designed for kids, game developers should not be allowed to monetize addiction, Hawley said in a press release, and when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences, something that's been raised in Europe by countries like Belgium. Last fall, the Federal Trade Commission promised to investigate loot boxes following a letter from Senator Maggie Hassan, a Democrat from New Hampshire, that she wrote in the wake of 2017's string of games featuring the heavy usage of predatory microtransactions, such as Middle-earth: Shadow of War, which eventually did remove the loot box system. They did it after the game really didn't have I guess, any buzz. They waited until the last second to get some good publicity, but at that time it really didn't matter. Anyway, they continue. In Star Wars Battlefront 2, we already know that's the prime example of predatory loot boxes in AAA gaming. Although some companies have pulled back in the practice, popular games like Overwatch, FIFA, and Apex Legends continue to make big money off of randomized microtransactions. Many of those games are played by both adults and children. Holly39 has become known in Washington for criticizing major tech companies Facebook and Google, often accusing them of anti-conservative bias. Okay, anyway. So we've had multiple studies. I mentioned this in my last video. I'm going to click on this. This actually just came days ago from gamesindustry.biz. Study sees link between loot boxes and gambling. Most gamers surveyed believe loot boxes are a form of gambling. More than a quarter have sold loot box items. And then we have VentureBeat, who made an article about the Australian study that said loot boxes are more like gambling than baseball cards, something that the ESRB has argued on behalf of video game publishers. So let's go down. I'm just going to read part of this. I've already discussed this before. So the question is, are loot boxes harmful? And the answer right now is possibly. Industry statements typically disassociate loot boxes from gambling. They instead highlight similarities between loot boxes and harmless products like trading cards or Kinder Surprise eggs. By contrast, researchers argue that loot boxes share so many formal similarities with other forms of gambling that they meet the psychological criteria to be considered gambling themselves. These results support the position of academics who claim that loot boxes are psychologically akin to gambling. And then to November 2018, coming from the BBC, it was found by the United Kingdom Gambling Commission that they raised concerns that close to 1 million young people had been exposed to gambling through loot boxes in video games or on smartphone apps. And the reason why they're concerned about this is that the number of child gamblers has quadrupled in just 2 years in the United Kingdom. And I think it would be foolish not to believe that video games have a part in that, and the greed of gaming publishers, they don't care about any of this. They just want to keep on making as much money as possible, and loot boxes are an avenue to that. I mean, think about this. Years ago, you'd be spending $2 on a cosmetic skin in a Call of Duty game, but now you're spending hundreds and if not thousands. And with Black Ops 4, we've been discussing as of the last few weeks some of the changes that they've made to encourage more microtransaction sales, and it's just gotten greedier, and it's pathetic what they're doing, but they're getting away with it because casual gamers, casual audiences just don't know, or they don't care. Now, so far the ESA, or I should say the ESRB, which was founded by the ESA representing all of these video game publishers, the only action that they have taken is by slapping in-game purchase stickers on video games. I don't know if that relates to digital, but the problem with that is games like Black Ops 4. They didn't introduce the microtransactions from the get-go. They introduced it later, and also that in-game app purchase sticker doesn't label what a loot box is or any of this. It doesn't tell parents or it doesn't tell consumers what specific in-game purchases are included in that. Like, there's a big difference between The Witcher 3's expansion DLCs versus Black Ops 4's microtransaction system, but you won't get that with an in-game purchase sticker slapped on a game. And so far the ESRB, this is what they have said about loot boxes. Patricia Vance, I believe she's the ESRB president, she says, "We think loot boxes are a fun way to acquire virtual items for use within the game to personalize your experience. While obviously there's an element of surprise in loot boxes, just like with baseball trading cards, the ability to complete games without buying loot boxes and the lack of an in-game method of cashing out both cut against the gambling descriptor." And as Ars Technica points out, loot box items can often be resold for store credit via the Steam Marketplace and through outside third-party services, like eBay with FIFA Ultimate Team. We've seen various accounts being sold and cards being sold on websites like that. Furthermore, this is something that I found very interesting. I believe this article, let me check the date of it. Yeah, it comes from all the way back in February of 2018. Vance said the ESRB has been unable to find any evidence that children specifically have been impacted by loot boxes or leading them to some sort of tendency towards gambling. We really truly don't know of any evidence supporting those claims. Well, I just read off 2 different studies and also the Gambling Commission from the United Kingdom raising concerns about loot boxes. So yes, now there has been studies linking gambling to loot boxes, something that the ESRB has long been arguing that there's no evidence of that. Well, well, it's starting to build up now. Anyway, in conclusion, it'll be interesting to see how the lobbyists from the video game industry fight this. They did it in Hawaii with those 2 bills, and they're going to do it here now, but I do find it interesting how you have Republicans and Democrats pointing that this is an issue. It's not just a partisan issue, it's thankfully bipartisan. So again, it will be very interesting to see who fights this and who doesn't, but the video game industry is going to come out hard battling against this and saying, no, loot boxes are just like baseball trading cards. In years past, I think arguments like that could have been made. The ESA, well, representatives working on behalf of the ESA have done a good job at downplaying this issue over the years.
I think also the ESA testimony reflected was that this is not gambling, or these sorts of mechanisms are not gambling because, well, for a number of reasons I'll get into in a minute. The UK Gambling Commission, among others, seems to identify this, or portions of this at least, as gambling. Their annual report recently just found that 45% of 11 to 16-year-olds are aware of what's called skins betting, where you have products which you earn out of randomized loot boxes, which you can purchase, which can then be traded for cash. So fundamentally, that seems to be gambling, if you can cash out these things for real monetary value. Is it not?
I'm not, I cannot answer that.
Well, let's move on. When it comes to, and just for Bruce again, when it comes to loot boxes and that sort of thing, how does a player know their odds of winning something that they're paying for?
Well, first of all, I think the loot boxes, and that if I recall, that's an option. You have the option of purchasing, or you can, correct me, but I think you can get to the end game, the same way without the loot box. Is that, if I'm understanding what you're...
I think if people are
you have
buying
the option,
something...
you have the option to go with the loot box.
Sure. Anybody has an option not to walk into a casino, right?
Well,
but this has just become more and more of an issue, and awareness has finally been raised. And this may be just the beginning, but we're getting there. Eventually, regulation is coming, and the video game industry only has themselves to blame. The executives at Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, Andrew Wilson at Electronic Arts, Bethesda Game Studios, even themselves with the Elder Scrolls Blades, with those loot boxes, they are a problem, and they should not be in gaming. They should be frowned upon, but these publishers, these greedy publishers, just continue to go at it, and they just don't know when to stop, which is why, unfortunately, governments are going to have to intervene. And I know people aren't crazy about that, but they had their chances. But just thinking about it, there's more examples that I could bring up about the mobile gaming market other than the Elder Scrolls Blades, but I don't play many mobile games just because it's horrible. The market's just horrible with so many in-game advertisements and so many microtransactions. It's quite annoying. But even in the AAA gaming industry, if you want to play a fun sports game, like NBA 2K19 has been described as a microtransaction stuff disaster. The only good sports game without having horrible microtransactions thrown down your throat, as I believe MLB The Show, which is produced by Sony Santa Monica. But anyway, like I said, it's going to be very interesting, the arguments that the lobbyists will try to throw and who they will try to get to, I guess, make the argument that loot boxes are good and are acceptable. Whatever. We'll see, but another huge step towards legislation has been introduced by a Republican from Missouri. And like I said, this is a bipartisan issue, so I don't know. I think that this is eventually leading to legislation, and those greedy video game executives have themselves to blame for all of this. Anyway, guys and gals, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, your opinions on loot boxes and predatory microtransactions. Are you happy about legislation coming, or are you a little nervous? Let me know. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so make sure to follow me over there. Also, check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.